Welcome back to Ford Friday. We're going to start working on our 1965 Mustang rebuild project again. Now, last time we made a brace for our passenger side door. This time we're going to make a brace for our driver's side door and some bracing for the rest of the body so that when we cut the floor and the front end off of it, it doesn't turn into a pretzel. So once we get all of our bracing done, it's time to start cutting. So if I can find the nerve, maybe we can get that done today. Well, at least get it started. So let's get started.
So we'll start by making our door for our driver's side. So the removal of this striker is going to take something a little more aggressive than our tiny little ratchet. So we'll use an impact driver to break them loose. Once they're loose, we can spin them out. Once they start, they come out pretty easy. Then we can cut off our bracket to bolt in where our striker goes. And because it's hot and we like to touch things and burn ourselves, we're going to put that to the side and start working on the brace in the front while it cools off. Clamp it up. And mark the inside. That's all marked. We can unclamp it. Drill out our holes. We'll drill our 1/8 inch pilot holes. Center them all. Then we use a drill press to drill our 3/8 holes. Now the bracket for the striker is cooled off a little bit so we can drill our holes in it. Our 1/8 inch holes. And put our striker bracket on. I did use different bolts because the original striker bolts are tapered. I wanted something flat. Put our brackets in for our hinges and put the front bolts in them so they don't fall back out. Now we can put our bracket on. See if we got these 4 holes lined up. We did on the other side. See if we can get lucky twice in a row. 3 and 4. Wow. Sometimes you get it right. So we'll clamp up the bar to connect the two together. Measure it out. And mark it off. Cut the end of it off. Take it over the grinder and clean it up. And clamp it back up. Measure it out. Sure it's the same as the other side and level. Now we can weld it on.
Gloves on top of gloves. Added safety.
You know me, Mr. Safety, he says as he welds in short sleeves. We'll hack the ends of this bar off. So the cutoff saw is pretty old and used. It's really hard to get it to adjust and get it back to centered. It's easier for me just to take these pieces that have angle cuts over to the vise and use a Sawzall. We'll save the saw for when we're making 90-degree cuts, which is the majority of what we make. Now we'll weld our brace in there. I'll mark the brace for the bottom, same way we did on the top. Cut our angles. And weld it in. So now it's time to make some brackets to connect the braces side to side so that when we cut the floor out, the body doesn't flex. So first we'll drill some holes in them. We'll drill our 1/8" holes, and then we'll drill 7/16 holes. We're going to use a little bigger bolts in here because we can. So now that our brackets are done, we can clamp them up. Driver's side. Now the passenger side. I had these cut to length. It just so happened they were exact right length and I didn't need to cut them again. So now I'll tack our brackets in there. We're going to put some nuts in the end of them so we can bolt them in. Everything I put in, I can unbolt so that if anytime I'm working and I need them out of the way, I can take them out of the way without cutting welds out and put them right back where they go. I'm going to weld a nut in the other side, then head over to the grinder and flatten them out. Now ready to go back in. Start our bolt on our passenger side. Pretty snug. Start the bolt on the driver's side and tighten it up. Now tighten up the passenger side. Insert the obligatory, that's not going anywhere. Now we cut some brackets for the front. Those two for the rear were just leftovers. I saved the scraps because you never know. So now we'll drill our holes in our brackets. 1/8" holes. I got them stacked on top of each other, so I only have to drill them once. Now we can take it over the drill press and drill our 7/16 holes. These are all Freedom units, of course. Clamp the bracket up to the front. Measure it out, make sure it's the same. Clamp up the driver's side. And make sure it's in the same place. Now we can weld it in. Weld in the passenger side. Now we can weld the nuts into the end. I just clamped it up to the front rail of the car. Made a nice workbench. I've already noticed a design flaw in my bracing here, so I'm kind of glad that I did make it removable, because in the future, I am going to have to take out some of these braces to put this thing together. At least I think. We'll find out. After grinding off the ends, we can install it. Set it into place. Thread the bolt into the driver's side and the passenger side and tighten it up. And tighten up the driver's side. Now that our bracing is done, we can put it up in the air, hopefully for the last time. Slide our jack stands under the rear end. Set it down. Now we're going to use our frame rack, slash forklift, slash lift, slash jack, slash welding table. I believe there was another use for it last week, but I don't remember what else it was. So now we can slide our jack stands under the front. Just going to put them under the pinch welds. Hopefully they'll be out of our way for a while. I'm definitely going to have to move the rears, but I think the fronts can stay here. So now we can remove the deck lid, because it was the last thing I found to do before I actually have to start working underneath it and drilling spot welds out. So we'll take the hinges and everything. It's just 2 bolts. No wires on this one. I'll disconnect the brake line to the rear, get it off of our firewall before we cut it out. Unbolt the brake line and fuel line from the rail and firewall. And then cut the exhaust off. Pretty satisfying to run a sawzall through this hacked up exhaust. I'll unbolt this clamp that's onto the hanger that clamps the pipe that's welded to the muffler. Yeah, somebody's been here before. Unbolt the hanger on the driver's side. And get this muffler out of the way. I probably should have done this before I removed the motor. I could have gained another 2 horsepower to add to the original 12 the motor had. Now we can unbolt the brace in the center of the car. Pretty thick stuff. A couple of the bolts had run aground before, so we had to pound a socket onto them.
Free tools!
Can't complain about free tools. I can pull the exhaust down, get it out of there. I'll unbolt the rest of the fuel line and the brake line. Get a little of the undercoating off of it so we can get to the head of the bolt. I can pull the e-brake cables, pull the clips off. Wiggle them out of there. Now you can unbolt the brake line in the rear.
You need the any size wrench.
Alright, we got the any size wrench. Clamp it on there. Break it loose. These brake lines were in pretty good shape. These are original. Kind of a shame to throw them away. I can unbolt the fuel line in the back. And get these lines out of the way. Now we got the plasma cutter because I felt like bringing it and probably should have brought it when I cut the 2015 apart. We're going to cut the ends of these frame rails off. They're seam welded, so this makes it a lot easier. Let's make our cuts all around. Did have a little bit of a fire. Turns out there was a bird's nest in that brace behind here, or a squirrel's nest, or some kind of rodent. Whatever it was, it's homeless now. Hope they had Allstate. So now we're going to start drilling. We messed around long enough. Pretty much everything's coming apart just like this. An 1/8 inch pilot hole, a 5/16 hole, and then break it loose. Here on the passenger side, I couldn't see the other weld. It was pretty flat, so you just start prying it up a little bit until you get to where the weld is. Then it kind of shows up. Drill our pilot hole, drill our actual holes, hammer it flat so it looks nice when it's going in the pile, and we'll break it loose. This is going to be my life for a good portion of this job for now. So now we can clean the seam sealer off the top of the cowl so that we can see our spot welds. We'll drill all our pilot holes all the way across. There's a lot of welds in this car. Switch our drill bits over. I definitely don't miss the old days when we actually had to use keys for the chucks on drills. Now we can drill out the actual spot welds. Slowly as the little compressor struggles to keep up. Once we got all that done, we can put our breaker in there and start breaking all these apart. This breaker is available in my Amazon store if you want to check out the link in the description, as well as the impact driver and a few other tools I use. Break all our spot welds loose all the way across. Now we'll finish up going down the side, on the passenger side. There's a lot of spot welds to drill. Not sure if you want to see them all, so I kind of sped them up. I got tired of editing them all out, so I'm sure you guys are tired of seeing them all. Let me know for the rest of this job if you want me to do it similar to this, or if you just want me to time lapse the whole thing. Because otherwise, you're going to have to watch me drill out lots of spot welds. And I know boring is my thing, but even I have my limits. So now we're on to the inside of the car. I'm going to drill the floor loose from the frame rail that goes underneath. And then we're going to drill out the seams so we can separate the firewall from the floor. These are just our pilot holes from now. So now we're going to drill the welds in this cross brace off of the frame rails. Separate it from the rails. We're going to pry the end of this cross brace over so we can take a peek inside and find out there's welds in there we can't get to. So now we're going to drill out the welds that hold that to the floor. And that piece is going with the rails. We're going to drill all the rest of our holes out now, make our pilot holes a little bigger so that the welds break loose. Oh, the safety experts are foaming at the mouth. Now they're going to tell me I should be wearing my helmet. Oh well, I survived. So instead of using the breaker to break all these seams loose, we're just going to hit it with a hammer, a pretty big one. See how many we can break loose from the floor and these frame rails without using the breaker. Sometimes it works. Pretty thick stuff underneath, so we'll see what happens. So we got everything separated across the top of the cowl, down the sides, our floor. That brace is separated all the way across. And our frame rails. The driver's side is all separated. Bottom's all separated.
Well, that's all for today. It's getting late. I want to go home. So we're going to pack it up here. Now, next time I come in, I won't be unhappy to find that the front end just fell onto the ground. There might be a little more work to do, but we'll get it off next time for sure. So like this video if you found it interesting, share it if you think somebody else might, subscribe to see the rest of this build or whatever else I'm working on. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.